Yes, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this beautiful Friday morning. It's quite a rainy morning, bit of a cold one down in Kampala, Uganda, where I do come to you live from with 31 minutes past the hour of 9 a.m. So, it's a Friday, and as the norm always is, we get into our weekend preview, and it does promise to be a blockbuster weekend. Unfortunately, for the Spanish La Liga fans, we do not have much for you or anything for you in stock because this weekend you'll be forfeiting the Spanish La Liga and settling for the Copa del Rey final between Atletico de Madrid against Real Sociedad. Nonetheless, we will still have the conversations in regards to the Premier League and give you what's to come from the Italian Serie A as well as the German Bundesliga, plus the French League One in terms of fixtures. So, but our major focus will be on the our main focus will be on the Premier League, where it does promise to be a blockbuster weekend in as far as match day 33 is concerned. Plenty of action to come our way this weekend, with the race for European football heating up just as much as that of the Premier League title. So you will indulge me, have our audios tested, and make sure everything does check out perfectly well before we proceed any further in the purposes of this, broadcast. So yeah, basically that will be the gist of our discussion this morning. But on that note, therefore, I wish to send my sincere vote of thanks to all those that have been those of that have recently subscribed to the channel, our TikTok family that have recently joined. Thank you so much from the Nando Global Sports Live Forum. Thank you so much for heeding to that call of coming to join the Football Tribe UG community. I do hope you get to enjoy your stay with us here. Here it's a free conversation. Unfortunately, I don't want to say it's one-sided because there's a comment section to always utilize. So yeah, that will be it for now. So just give me a moment. I get to share this with some of you, and we get going for this morning's broadcast. Otherwise, I hope you've been okay. Yesterday, we had some disagreements with some of our followers. Pedri did not take to heart our sort of assessment of Barcelona's semi-final performance in as far as the UEFA Champions League was concerned. The quarter-final performance, when I said that they were good, but not good enough to advance. So, anyways, just beautiful. Okay. Then also we'll be having an exclusive in terms of the preview for the Manchester City versus Arsenal game. That video is already been done. It's just waiting to be. It's going to premiere as soon as this broadcast finishes. So look out for that one. It's about close on to 20 minutes. There are slightly. So keep your tabs glued to that one, and then. It's just going to be massive. So in this particular episode, do not expect me to break down the Manchester City versus Arsenal game, because we have an exclusive video entirely for that one. And then of course we and then of course we'll be doing the Man United game against Chelsea. We'll do the Everton game, and that among other things. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for that and more in as far as this particular broadcast is concerned. So because that will be the basis of our conversation. But nonetheless, do not hesitate to share your questions, your opinions, your comments in regards to the things that we will be discussing in as far as this particular episode is concerned. Then we will get to touch on some of the key news from the different teams or from the world of football as a whole. Like we briefly discussed last night, Barcelona have lodged their second appeal to UEFA in regards to what they take to be discrepancies in respect to the officiation of their quarterfinal games against Atletico de Madrid, because they thought they deserved better. They thought the applications of the rules of the game were flawed, and therefore you know, they think through that appeal, they can help to improve the overall officiation of the game. So they launched that appeal. That's ongoing. Then also, yesterday we had some sad news regarding the passing of sorry, regarding, yes, the passing of Elliot Anderson's mother. I think she was called Helen. So yesterday he did not feature for Nottingham Forest because he lost his mother at only the age of 23 years old. You can only imagine what that means for a player like Elliot Anderson, who has sort of had a very, very brilliant season with Nottingham Forest. Never mind that Nottingham Forest's overall season has been far from perfect, especially when it comes to the Premier League. In regards to the UEFA Europa League, they are into the semi-finals and they managed to advance, and they will be taking on Aston Villa in a Premier League derby at the semi-finals of that competition. So we'll also get to, look at what the results were in regards to the UEFA Conference League, the UEFA Europa League, for those updates. So without wasting any further ado, let's get down to it straight away. Adash, good morning. Good to have you back on the broadcast. Adash is one of our usual suspects that does join us every single day in recent times. We thank you. Then we have First Last. Hello to you too. Good morning. So for those of you that have just joined us, my name is Robert Kesakos. Kindly consider liking the broadcast, but also subscribing to the channel if it is your first time here with us. So we'll begin with the updates from the UEFA Europa League yesterday that we did watch. Aston Villa were quite very unstoppable in regards to their exploits in the UEFA Europa League. They put 4 past Bologna in that fixture, in a game where you had Morgan Rogers miss a penalty, but nonetheless managed to get himself on the score sheet. When you watch the manner in which the Bologna goalkeeper saves the penalty, and then you look at the 2 subsequent goals that he concedes against Emi Buendia and Morgan Rogers himself, you can't help but think, what was he thinking, Anyways, Ollie Watkins, who did open the scoring in the 18th minute, in the 16th minute of that game, with Morgan Rogers providing the assist, but minutes later he missed it from 12 yards to convert, and it remained 1-0. Nonetheless, it was still Aston Villa in the driving seat of the tie, because that goal from Ollie Watkins had put them 4-1 on aggregate score overall. Then Emi Buendia in the 26th minute, while in the 39th minute of the first stanza, it was Morgan Rogers that put the ball in the back of the net. And Enzri Konsa, like he did in the first leg of that particular tie, he also managed to get himself on the score sheet to make it 4-0, and that was in the 89th minute. Therefore, they advanced 7-1 on aggregate. I mean, I expected Aston Villa to be good, but I did not expect Bologna to be this bad, especially bearing in mind that they knocked out AC Roma of Gian Piero Gasperini to get this far of the competition. But nonetheless, it is what it is. Maybe Unai Emery's side were pretty too strong for the Italian side, because I, for one, do tip Aston Villa to go all the way to the final and possibly win it. Nonetheless, they will have to first overcome that semi-final hurdle against Nottingham Forest. Speaking of Nottingham Forest, Morgan Gibbs-White's strike that took a deflection was enough to win it for Nottingham Forest against FC Porto, to win the overall tie 2-1 on aggregate score, a game in which FC Porto had a couple of good chances. They hit the woodwork, but very early on in that fixture, Benarek was given matching orders, so they had to play majority of the game down to 10 men, and that's how Nottingham Forest often found spaces in behind them. Unfortunately for Nottingham Forest, Chris Wood, their striker, who had just returned from injury, had to be sent back to the sick bay with an injury that he sustained yesterday. So that one also is not very, very good news for Vita Pereira's side, who are battling relegation, and they have some really, really difficult fixtures that are going to come their way when in the aftermath of this weekend, or beyond their exploits this weekend. So I think that's a very, very significant to take note of. In the other results, Real Betis lost to Braga by 4-2 on the night and lost out on the tie, 5-3 on aggregate. First Last is asking who is winning the Champions League. Let me answer that question in a bit. Then Celta Vigo lost to Freiburg by 3-1 in the earlier fixture. Therefore, they got knocked out 6-1 on aggregate score to set up this sort of a final. Sorry, to set up this sort of semi-final where you have Nottingham Forest at home against Aston Villa in the first leg on the 30th of April, while Braga will take on Freiburg, and then the reverse fixtures will be played on the 7th of May, where Aston Villa will take on Nottingham Forest, and the reverse will be true for Freiburg and Braga. Then, of course, the final will be played on the 20th of May, for those of you that could be wondering. But those are the exploits in as far as the UEFA Europa League is concerned. Okay, I see somebody is sending us a comment. Richard says hi. Hi, Richard. Good to have you on the broadcast. So it's a pleasure to see you around. Anyways, moving on to the UEFA Conference League, because even on that side, we are happy for Oliver Glasner, because his Crystal Palace side managed to advance at the expense of Fiorentina, who beat them by 2-1, but because they had won the reverse fixture by 3-0, they advanced 4-2 on aggregate score. Goodmanson did score a penalty in that one to give Fiorentina the lead, as well as Ondoa, who scored the second goal there in the second half. But Ismail Sarr's opener in the 17th minute had given Crystal Palace the lead. Nonetheless, they could not find a draw or a win in Italy, but they will be pleased with themselves going into the semi-finals. They are one of the favorites, but they will need to overcome that semi-final hurdle, in which now they have to take on Shakhtar Donetsk, who, that's the Ukrainian side that knocked out AZ Alkmaar from the Dutch Eredivisie 5-2 on aggregate score, because yesterday it finished 2-2 at full time for both sides, subsequent to the 3-0 victory for Shakhtar Donetsk. Then also Athens managed to beat up against Rayo Vallecano by 3-1, but nonetheless, despite that victory, it wasn't good enough to see them advance to the semi-finals, because Rayo Vallecano had won the reverse fixture by 4-1. By 3-0. Therefore, they managed to advance 4-3 on aggregate score. And then the comeback that one I partly sort of not particularly expected to happen, but one that I thought was a possibility to happen, was that of Strasbourg when they were taking on Mainz 05. They had lost the first stanza, or the first leg of this one, by 2-0, but Strasbourg, who are under the charges of Gary O'Neill, the former Wolverhampton Wanderers manager, managed to win that one by 4-0 to advance to the semi-finals of the UEFA Conference League, for which Chelsea are the reigning champions. So Chelsea are not in this one. This season they had their exploits in the UEFA Champions League, but they got knocked out by the reigning champions of PSG 8-3 on aggregate score from the round of 16. So Rayo Vallecano will take on Strasbourg, and then Shakhtar Donetsk will be up against Crystal Palace. Ideally, my final would be my ideal final would be Strasbourg versus Crystal Palace. That's the ideal final that I want for selfish reasons. But nonetheless, I will acknowledge that whoever gets there is the one that will get there on merit. We'll just have to wait and see what's up with that one. Okay, to briefly answer last is a question on regards to who is winning the Champions League. I'll answer the question in two formats. One, according to the supercomputer, Bayern Munich are the favorites with about, I think, 34% chance of winning it. Then Arsenal second with the possibility of winning it at about 28%. PSG are third, and then obviously Atletico de Madrid are down the pecking order. Those are the teams in the semi-finals, with PSG up against Bayern Munich, while Arsenal will be taking on Atletico de Madrid. Based on current form, how all teams are applying themselves, I'd fancy Bayern Munich to get the better of PSG and reach the finals of the UEFA Champions League that will be played on the 30th of May at the Puskás Arena in Budapest. Then from the Arsenal arm, I would fancy Atletico de Madrid. Like I said, based on current form, because Arsenal are not really particularly playing well. So I'd fancy Atletico de Madrid to go through and face Bayern Munich. And then Bayern Munich wins it all. So I'm tilting towards Bayern Munich as the eventual champions. But for wishful reasons, I would fancy to see Arsenal in the final against Bayern Munich. Perhaps it too would be a very interesting tie. I would know the two sides met around the the league phase of the UEFA Champions League, and Arsenal got the better of Bayern Munich. But the Arsenal that thrashed Atletico de Madrid 4-0, that beat Bayern Munich 3-1, seems to be a shadow of that side as we speak presently. So that's my thought on the UEFA Champions League. Bayern Munich are the ultimate favorites. Okay, did not expect you to pick against PSG. Now, PSG are a very, very good side. And just like the commentator said during the game between Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, that it was the final before the final, this is equally no less different. It is a final before the final. PSG against Bayern Munich is box office kind of football. Those are the games that you want to watch. First of all, both teams have a very, very good attacking force. Nonetheless, I think that of Bayern Munich is slightly better. So then when you look at their midfields, I think the PSG midfield is slightly better. When you go to the defensive line, I think that of PSG is better, in my humble opinion. Willian Pacho, Marquinhos, Nuno Mendes, who by the way got injured in that reverse fixture against Liverpool, and they were forced to bring on what's his name, the French defender Theo Hernandez. So, and then Achraf Hakimi on the other side. In terms of goalkeepers, Manuel Neuer is the better goalkeeper compared to Matevi Safonov. So when you look at Bayern Munich's backline of Jonathan Tah, Dayot Upamecano, Konrad Lema, Josip Stanisic, they are good, but I just feel the other ones are slightly better. So it's an evenly matched contest. The two sides met in the league phase, and Bayern Munich overcame PSG by 2-1 in a game which Bayern Munich had to finish it with the manless following the sending off of Luis Diaz for a dangerous tackle on Achraf Hakimi. So it caused him an injury, and I think he was out of action until the Africa Cup of Nations. So it will be a close contest. Nonetheless, I do fancy Bayern Munich's chances to overcome Luis Enrique's side. So it's not to say that it is impossible for PSG to go through. It's just what I think. But also, all throughout this entire season, I wait to be stunned because I'm not one that has predicted PSG to get to the final, later on win it, because I do not remember the first time a first-timer defended this accolade. And for as far as we are concerned, PSG have only won it once, which was last year. So when you remember that sort of context, and I'm talking about in the UEFA Champions League era, because some people may go back, I think Benfica won it back-to-back when it was still Cup Winners' Cup. Real Madrid, I think, did. So those kinds of things. So I'm talking about the UEFA Champions League era. So really, it does promise to be a very, very big context. I'll send you the examples of Chelsea. When Chelsea won it in 2012, look, they had to wait until 2021 to win it. Again, look at Manchester City. Good as they were, the treble-winning side in 2023. They've not had a sniff on it ever since then. So it's been now what? This is going to be the third year, at 2024, 2025, and now 2026. So it usually takes a bit of time between winning it the first time and winning it the subsequent time. So, and I want to squeeze my mind into remembering another first-time winner if I were to go back to the Champions League era. I think you have to go back to Olympique Marseille, 1993. Let me try and think if there's any first-time winner in between there, So there could be others that do not come off easily off the fingertips, but usually when a team wins it for the first time, they tend to take a bit of time or struggle to win it the subsequent time. I think, that's just why I think PSG are not going to be the guys to win it. Okay, moving forward, it's going to be match day 33 of the Premier League this weekend, and I don't think it comes any better than it does promise to be this weekend, because we have some really, really big games. We have the Merseyside derby between Everton and Liverpool. We have the game between Chelsea and Manchester United. Traditionally, especially ever since the turn of the century, this should be box office. Nonetheless, their recent performances overall do not paint themselves as such. But nonetheless, it is still a very, very big game. in as far as the Premier League football is concerned. That's between Chelsea and Man United. Then on Sunday, we have possibly a title decider. Not the ultimate, but one with a lot to say about the Premier League title, and that's between Manchester City and Arsenal. So our focus is going to be on all the other games. Like I promised you, we have the preview of Man City versus Arsenal Premier League just at the tail end of this particular broadcast. So bear with me on that one. So here's the run of fixtures that should be coming your way this weekend in as far as match day 33 is concerned. Now, bear in mind that some of these teams are going to play games in midweek. And the reason for that is particularly next weekend, the teams that are going to be playing in the midweek, some of them have exploits in the semi-finals of the FA Cup that will be played at Wembley. And Manchester City is one of those. Chelsea is one of those, as well as Leeds United. So we'll be looking at, I'll be lighting the torch for you in terms of those fixtures, in terms of the fixture lineup that should be coming between the weekend and protruding through midway next weekend. So there's no Friday night football, but we have an early kickoff on Saturday at 2:30 p.m. between Brentford and Fulham. Then Leeds United at 5 p.m. will take on Wolverhampton Wanderers. Then Newcastle will entertain Bournemouth at St. James's Park. Tottenham Hotspur will be at home against Brighton, while Chelsea will take on Manchester United at Stamford Bridge. Then on Super Sunday, we'll have the Chelsea game comes at 10 p.m. East African time. Then on Super Sunday, Aston Villa will be at home against Sunderland at 4 p.m. Everton against Liverpool at the same kickoff time, while Burnley will be playing away to Nottingham Forest at the same kickoff time. And then at 6:30 p.m. on Super Sunday, Arsenal make the trip to the Etihad Stadium. Then on Monday Night Football, Crystal Palace will be at home against West Ham United in another London derby tie at 10 p.m. Of course, we know the responsibilities, particularly of West Ham, who are still battling relegation. Then on Tuesday, Brighton will be up against Chelsea, while on Wednesday, Bournemouth will take on Leeds, and then Burnley will be at home against Manchester City. Those are the fixtures that protrude into the subsequent week because of the reasons that I've highlighted for you henceforth. So, in terms of the previews, let's begin with the game against Chelsea. Between Chelsea and Manchester United. Very, very interesting fixture. One, you have two new managers in their respective roles, one an interim and one a permanent manager. Chelsea are not very synonymous with interim managers. They've had them before. When you remember the likes of Gusidik, I think he had two stints with Chelsea as an interim. When you remember the likes of Rafael Benitez Maudes, he had a stint with Chelsea as an interim back in 2013 and guided them to the triumph of the UEFA Europa League. Then you've had Frank James Lampard as an interim at some point with Chelsea, I think after they part ways with Graham Potter. So they've had that. On the side of Manchester United, ever since they part ways with Sir Alex Ferguson, they've had quite a couple of interims. Ryan Giggs in the aftermath of parting ways with David Moyes. They've had Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as an interim before he was given a full-time contract. You've had Michael Carrick on now his second stint. So in the aftermath of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's departure, and now you've also had Ruud van Nistelrooy as an interim at some point. So yeah, that's the situation, or the managerial situation with these two sides. Then I think they both managed about 11 Premier League games. Chelsea, unfortunately for Liam Razinha, he's lost 4 of the last 5. Whereas Michael Adrian Carrick, on the other side, he's lost 2 of the last 5, winning 2 and drawing 1. Overall, I think Michael Carrick is the better performer of the two managers. He's only lost 2 games. He's drawn 2. I think the other draw came against West Ham. And then, so that means he's won about what? He's won about 7 of his 11 games in charge. And then Liam Rasinha on the other side, he's won about what? Might have won about 5, I think. Because he has 2 draws against Leeds and Burnley. Then he has losses to Arsenal, to Newcastle, to Everton, and to Manchester City. So, yeah, that's pretty much about it, really. So it's going to be a difficult fixture. First of all, both teams aspire to finish within the top 5 and qualify for UEFA Champions League football. Nonetheless, Chelsea have put themselves steps back of that. This weekend is an opportunity to win and close the gap on those that they are trying to push for the same objective. Chelsea find themselves in 6th place with 48 points. A win for them would take them to 51 points without a change in position, but perhaps closer to Liverpool and Aston Villa, and in a similar breadth to Manchester United, depending on how the results of the other opponents go. Because if Chelsea win, Aston Villa win, and Liverpool win, then it will still be a good result, but perhaps not as ideal as they would have loved it if the other opponents were to falter at the same time when they win. So there's that context to it. Then on the side of Manchester United, because they have slipped in recent times, Aston Villa are back in frame. Remember, Manchester United not too long ago, they won their fixtures and leapfrogged Aston Villa. And I remember when Michael Adrian Carrick had just taken charge and was beating teams left, right, and center, including beating Arsenal, Manchester City, Tottenham Hotspurs, Fulham being one of those. Man United fans were so hopeful, perhaps in a rush of judgment, and perhaps wishful, so you cannot blame it on them. Football is about hope and belief. They thought they're going to be part of the Premier League title race. I, for one, did not believe as such, but it is what it is. What do you think about the title race? We'll get to that in a bit. So allow me conclude with first. That's Ding Dong. Ding Dong. Oh, interesting name. Interesting name. Mr. Ding Dong. Okay. So in as far as this particular fixture is concerned, you have two managers who are trying to beautify their CVs. One has the job permanently, but has a lot to prove. Another is in hope that if he does well, the job becomes his permanently. In Michael Carrick, there's a section of Manchester United fans who are of a school of thought that he be given the job permanently, just as much as there is one that is opposed to the idea, including some historicals, the likes of Roy Keane. On the side of the Blues, you have Chelsea fans who think give Liam Morris Sr. all the time he needs to have a crack at this, but also you have a section of Chelsea fans who think he is out of his depth and therefore that they made the wrong decision in appointing him in the first place. All that coupled with the anger of Strasbourg fans. Remember, Chelsea and Strasbourg are sister clubs because they are under the ownership of Bluco. Strasbourg fans who think Bluco should not be their owners because they've turned Strasbourg into Chelsea's academy. First of all, they've been poaching their players, the likes of Mamadou Sarr, they want Emmanuel Emega, among others. And they did not stop at that. They went and poached their manager in Liam Rasinia. Yes, they may have given them a potent replacement in Gary O'Neill, but it's no less, poaching. It's like Strasbourg is like a testing lab for Chelsea. Remember last season, they had, I think, about 2 or more players from Chelsea on loan. You had George Petrovic, who Chelsea in the summer sold to AFC Bournemouth. That's the goalkeeper. You had Andre Santos over there on loan, and he did well while at Strasbourg. So that's the feeling of Strasbourg fans in regards to this Chelsea sort of conversation. The game in itself comes too early for Harry Maguire because he's still serving his suspension following that straight red card that he received in the tie against FC Bournemouth. Then Lisandro Martinez, Lucho, or Machete is also out through suspension following the red card he sustained for pulling Dominic Calvert-Lewin's hair in their 2-1 loss against Leeds United. Kobe Mainu has been out through injury. We are yet to hear from Michael Carrick in regards to his possible involvement in that particular game because evidently they did miss him in the previous fixture. And they missed him, and you could see that Man United struggled to progress the ball. Manel Ugarte has yet to live to the billing ever since joining them from PSG. And I do think he's one of those that could be on the way out of Manchester United come the summer because I think I was catching a clip from Ben Jacobs of Give Me Sport and Talk Sport. I think speaking with the United Standard, he said there's an expectation that Manchester United could receive as many as 6 to 7 incomings in the course of the summer in regards to a goalkeeper, because they expect Altay Baindia to leave. They expect Andre Onana to leave permanently, so a goalkeeper could come in, a centre back, if not two, then midfield is going to be a key part of that, and possibly a winger. So those could be their exploits, but some of those could depend on the potential departures. The likes of Tyler Malacia are expected to leave in whichever condition. We know for a fact that they've taken the decision not to exercise their right to extend Sancho's contract for a further year, so he will be leaving for free. Then you have Casemiro, who has already announced that he will be leaving the club. So you can see what that means in terms of the kind of job that Jason Wilcox and his minders have to do in rebuilding this Manchester United squad, particularly defensively and in the midfield. So they have all that to do. Then, of course, so those are two centre backs that you're missing. And then what that then implies is that you could have Lenny Yoro playing alongside Aiden Heaven in the centre-back pairing, or you could have Lenny Yoro alongside Luke Shaw, and then you have Nusa Mazorui in the left-back position, and then Diego Dalot in the right-back position. Anything could happen. Patrick Dogu, I think, is back on the grass training. I do not know if he's fit enough to feature in the matchday squad for this one, but do not rule out anything. He's been out, I think, of action for about anywhere between 8 to 9 weeks, close on, ever since he suffered his hamstring injury. I think, was it in the victory away to Arsenal, where they won by 3-2, most probably. So then you look at that midfield. Of course, like I mentioned, in the absence of Kobe Mainu, they struggled really against Leeds. So it leaves you with Manelu Gate, Casemiro, Bruno Fernandes. I had hoped, by the way, going into that fixture, in the absence of Kobe Mainu, that you swallow the bitter pill and take a page, even though it's a bad one or less ideal, of Amorim's book and play Bruno Fernandes in the 8 and play Mason Mount in the 10, or Acuna in there, so that you have a bold progressor in that midfield. Of course, you want Bruno Fernandes to be playing in the 10 because that's where he's more effective. But this was sort of more of a situation that had been forced onto Michael Carrick that he needed to find a solution for. So nonetheless, let's expect, I think, more or less the same of what we had against Leeds, even though it did not look good. And then you have Brani Mbeumo, you have Matas Cunha and Amadou Diallo in that sort of setup. On the side of Chelsea, Levi Colwill is back. I think he was set, or is set to play with the under-21s. He's returning from his long knee anterior cruciate ligament injury. I stand to be corrected if that is not the specificity of it. But then you need, Wesley Fofana in that backline, maybe alongside a Trevor Chalobah or a Joel Hato. Looks like there's a way Liam Rasinha has a preference for Joel Hato, who they signed from Ajax over in the summer. Marco Cucurella at the left back position. Then, of course, Richie James. This one comes a little too early for him, so expect Malo Gusto at right back. And then Robert Sanchez in goal. Moises Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez returns to action after a two-match suspension, missing the game against Port Vale and the one against Manchester City through suspension by his own club for the statements that were deemed to be unworthy that he said in the media. Then ahead of him is Cole Palmer, Pedro Neto to one side, perhaps William Esteval to the other, and Joao Pedro leading the lines. It's a very, very close contest that we would want to expect. One that I think Chelsea will be very, very dominant, especially in that midfield. I think Man United will look to play counter-attacking football. They have struggled in recent times to win away at the Stamford Bridge. In fact, their last two visits there have ended in defeat, one by 0-0, and that was last season, and the season prior to that by 4-3. Really, the reverse fixture, particularly this season, Man United won it by 2-1. Robert Sanchez got a red card in the 50th minute of that one. So, it had all that. Then, so I do expect a very close battle between the sides. Bruno Fernandes would need to be at the peak of his game just as much as, Matthias Cunha and Mbeumo if Man United are to have a chance. Then Benjamin Sesko, when called upon, are off of the bench. But on the other side, Chelsea ought to find a way in through Joao Pedro. He needs to find his scoring boots back again. Cole Palmer, it's been a bit of a dull season for him by measure of his own standards, one that has been hampered by injuries nonetheless. Pedro Neto, I mean, he's Pedro Neto. He will give you a couple of good games and then sort of fizzle down. William Esteval, he was quite very promising very early on in the season, but something sort of dimmed his candle during the course of the season. Bro, you are Nuno Mendes. That is Dominic Solanke. Wait, is it Dominic Solanke? We could be having the Tottenham striker here with us, Dominic Solanke. Bro, you mean Nuno Mendes? No, I'm not Nuno Mendes, but I do appreciate Nuno Mendes as arguably one of the best left backs we've seen, I think, in the last 1.5 years or so. So, anyways, that's the contest between Man United and Chelsea. I'm going to go for a 2-1 prediction for Chelsea to win this game over Man United. That's my prediction. So quickly, let's move away to then the Merseyside Derby, another interesting fixture that is coming for us this weekend. But before I get to the Merseyside Derby, let me respond to Ding Dong's question of what do you think about the title race? And as far as the Premier League title race is concerned, it is still close. It is far from done. Mathematically, everything is still possible. It is for Arsenal to lose, though. They have not painted themselves in good glory. I think they've left their fans nervous, devoid of hope. They've been uninspiring in their performances. I do not think their fans are eager to watch them. They are more eager to see a positive result at the end of the game, as opposed to living the moment and enjoying the game. On the other side, their title rivals in Manchester City, they are doing everything right. Their fans are enjoying watching their team play. They've been playing really good football. They've been scoring loads of goals. They have not been conceding because they've kept 3 clean sheets in their last 3 games against Arsenal, Liverpool, and Chelsea. And those wins are quite of great significance in terms of being morale and confidence boosters. One gave them a trophy in the Carabao Cup. The other got them to the semi-finals of the FA Cup. Remember last year they made it to the finals and lost to Crystal Palace. I forget who they beat in the semi-finals, particularly for Manchester City, because I remember Crystal Palace beating Aston Villa. I think, was it by 3-1 or 3-0? I think 3-1 in the semi-finals. So they sat. Then after dismissing Liverpool, they beat Chelsea quite comfortably. So, and just imagine if they could if they could beat up against Arsenal, what it would mean for the fans. Remember last weekend, as Arsenal had lost to AFC Bournemouth by 2-1, there's been this trending gentleman who was holding an empty bottle branded with Arsenal to show that Arsenal are bottling it once again, that they are bottling the league. We're talking about a Manchester City side that have clinched the Premier League title on 2 occasions at the expense of Arsenal in 2023 and 2024. So you can understand the sort of fever and the shivers that lay within the Arsenal fan base, and perhaps by extension, their own players and coaches within their own ranks, because they know that Man City have done this before. So until Arsenal get it done, the doubts are not going to be gone away. I think we know what Arsenal need to do to win it, just as much we know what Manchester City need to do to win it. So it's there for the taking. Still, nothing has been decided in as far as the Premier League title is concerned. Okay, Dominic says rank these midfielders on current basis: Bruno Fernandes, Fede Valverde, Soboslai, Pedri, Vitinha. Okay, I'll begin by saying this. It's you do pose a very difficult question. And what makes it difficult is that you put on table midfielders that largely play different roles. For example, Bruno Fernandes is a 10, arguably the best 10 currently there is in European football in terms of effectiveness. Not in terms of talent per se, in terms of effectiveness, understanding your role and doing it efficiently well. Bruno Fernandes is right up there at the top. Then Fede Valverde and Dominic Szoboszlai are both 8s. Based on the overall sort of scale of the season, I find this a bit equal. Dominic Szoboszlai has decided games for Liverpool, just as much as Fede Valverde has done for Real Madrid. One had a very good first part of the season, that is Szoboszlai, and Fede Valverde had a poor first half of the season. In contrast, it's been a better second part of the season for Valverde as opposed to what it's been for Szoboszlai. Nonetheless, I'll put Szoboszlai at the moment ahead of Fede Valverde, in my humble opinion, as a number 8. I'll have to be very specific, not as a 10. I've seen Szoboszlai be played as a 10 and it's never good, or it never looks good. So I'll put him there. And now, then Vitinha and Pedri, both central midfielders, I'll put them this way. So based on what you've given me, I'll go Bruno Fernandes, I'll go Vitinha, I'll go Pedri, I'll go Szoboszlai, and I'll go Fede Valverde. Mind you, I'm a Real Madrid fan, so it pains me to put Fede Valverde below Szoboszlai. But best, like you said, to rank them based on current basis, I think that will be my ranking of those midfielders. So thank you so much for that question. Okay, let's digress back. Okay, I appreciate your opinion. Prime Hazard or Prime Salah? Prime Salah any day. That's, again, context to it. If I want entertainment, I'll go with Hazard. If I want effectiveness or efficiency in the game, I'll go with Salah. But overall, Salah over Hazard any day. That's the difference in context. So I hope I've answered your question sufficiently. You can keep them coming as we go through the other fixture. So the Merseyside Derby, this one will come on Sunday at 4 p.m. The first of its kind at the Hill-Dixon Stadium. This is the new home of Everton. The last Merseyside Derby that we did witness prior to this season, in terms of Everton being at home, was at the Goodson Park, which ended in a 2-2 draw. When it comes to, you remember the late equalizer by James Tarkowski in that very, very chaotic game that was played between those two sides. I do sort of remember it because it had a red card at the tail end of it for Curtis Jones, I think. James Tarkowski, his goal came in the 8th minute of stoppage time. They had gone through, they had squad through Beto. I think Abdoulaye Diakore also got a red card, and this was, I think, after the game, after the final whistle. Those two players, for Curtis Jones and Abdoulaye Diakore. Then Mohamed Salah and Alexis McAllister had scored for Liverpool. So, you know, it was a very, very a well-contested game in as far as that particular tie was concerned. So who would you start for a final, Prime Salah, Henry, or Hazard? I think that's a simple one to answer. Prime Henry any day, all day long. So, yeah, that's a simple one. Hi, Milton. Good morning to you, sir. Milton does join us from London. So, the Merseyside Derby. First of all, David Moyes has always struggled with the Merseyside Derby. And there's a reason as to why in 67 meetings in the Premier League, Everton have only won it 11 times. There have been 26 draws and 30 wins for Liverpool. So Liverpool have the lion's share of victories, but the draws are just as many. And there's a significant reason for that. And Bale was there. Still, I'll go with Henry. I'll go with Henry. Yes. I mean, they're all very good players, but I'll still go with Henry. Whether it's Bale, Salah, Hazard, I don't know who else you would stand to add, but I'd still go with Henry. There's a reason as to why even failed former players acknowledge him as arguably the best Premier League player ever. There's a reason for that. So I want to respect that. So anyways, Back to the Merseyside derby. Of course, Liverpool has won the last 2 ties, and it's a fixture they've dominated. However, going away to or playing away to Everton, they've been winless in their last 2 visits. Even though these were at Goodson Park, 2-0 and a 2-all draw in their last 2 visits. At the Hill Dixon Stadium, it's going to be the first time that Liverpool make the trip there, and it does promise to be a blockbuster. It's feisty, so many red cards, so many goals are often scored in this particular fixture. So we should expect a really, really good game. Everton have been brilliant. Really, they may not have won too much. They've been brilliant. In the last 5, they've only lost to Arsenal by 2-0. Really, during that period, they've beaten teams like Newcastle away from home by 3-2. They managed to overcome Burnley. They dismissed Chelsea in that 3-0 victory at home before a 2-all draw away against Brentford. That was last weekend. On the other side, for Liverpool have had their struggles. Losing to Wolverhampton Wanderers and Brighton have not painted them in good glory. In between there, a 1-all draw against Tottenham Hotspur, which wasn't one of their proud performances, but they were proud of the 2-0 victory that they managed to register against Fulham last weekend. And then when you go further back in terms of their last 5, they also have a victory against West Ham United. Arguably, the teams that you would expect them to beat up against, although you would have expected them to win against Wolverhampton Wanderers, but they ended up getting beat. So we're talking about a Liverpool side who it's now been confirmed following their exit from the UEFA Champions League, 4-0 on aggregate score, following 2-0 defeats in either fixtures against PSG, are going to end the season trophyless. And Arne Slot is under some pressure. The objective now is to finish within the top 5 and qualify for Europe, and then go take it on from there. They have some really, really unfortunate news in the injury to Hugo Ekitike, who suffered an Achilles injury. I think he tore his Achilles, and he's been ruled out even for the World Cup. Estimates have it anywhere between 8 to 12 months for his return. Our reports have suggested that he will be back in January 2027. So that you see what that implies for Liverpool in the grand scheme of things. So to wrap up the season and going into next season, they'll be hoping to bank on the availability of Alexander Isak, who is just returned from a long injury that involved a leg fracture. I think Liverpool may snatch a goal. I mean, that's a huge possibility. Snatching a goal is one thing, but winning is another whole different story. So Everton have a very good side. James Tarkowski, Gerard Braithwaite have been really, really good in that centre-back pairing. In either of one's absence, which has been Gerard Braithwaite, it's been Michael Keane. Then you have Jack O'Brien, I think at right back, Vitaly Mykolenko at left back, one of those good guys. Then in that midfield, you've had Iliman Ndiaye and James Garner. Then you've had Keenan Brisbane Hall, you've had Drake McNeil and Iliman Ndiaye. Of course, Drake McNeil coming in the absence of Jack Grealish, who had provided, I think, 6 assists and scored 2 goals in 20 Premier League appearances for Everton. He was having a good season thus far until he suffered that season-ending foot injury. Then Abeto and what's the other guy's name? The striker that they signed from Villarreal over the summer. Thornberry, yes, have not really been that good. In terms of remembering their own good performances, for Beto, I specifically have to go back to the Chelsea game where he had the man of the match performance, scoring 2 and providing an assist for the other. So Everton have been really, really good. And at home, they've been not so good. They've been better, I think, away from home. Nonetheless, they have something to fight for because Liverpool is in sight for them. They may not be close because I think there's a 5 points. Is it a 5-point difference between the two sides? Because Everton have 47 points and Liverpool have 52 points. So yeah, a 5-point difference. So if you're Everton, you're thinking, if I win this one, I close on to Liverpool. But even if it is just not about Liverpool, European football is still in sight for Everton. Why? Because 6th place will take a team in the UEFA Europa League. 7th place will take a team in the UEFA Conference League. But now, remember this. If, let's say, Chelsea were to finish outside of no, sorry, let me see. Let's say you would have, because Chelsea have Leeds in the semi-finals of the FA Cup. Let's say Leeds were to reach the final and win the FA Cup. Leeds would qualify for Europa League football, and then you'd have still that second slot of the sixth place finisher also qualifying for Europa League football. So, but I think if you're Everton, you must be thinking UEFA Conference League football is within reach. And when you look at a team like Crystal Palace, who are faring fairly well, whether they win it or not is a whole different story, but at least they've fared well in the competition. They've had to drag themselves to the semi-finals because they did not have very, very good games, particularly in the league phase, because they had to go through the playoffs. But nonetheless, they are there. So you must take admiration in something of that kind, sort of, for you to have something to fight for. For Liverpool on the other side, like I've said, Arne Slot is under pressure. He's under-delivered this season. The reigning champions have been shambolic as far as the Premier League is concerned. They've already lost as many as 10 games and drawn 7. It's not good. The last thing you would want is lose another one, and more importantly, lose to their arch nemesis in Everton in this Merseyside derby. So you can see that there's a lot at stake for it. Really, they had a good game against PSG. They were not effective enough to find the back of the net, particularly in that second half. So they struggled to create more clear-cut chances because PSG defended really, really well, and then got themselves caught up on the counter-attack in the reverse direction. So they'll be looking to make amends. Nonetheless, I still expect to see Georgi Mamadashvili in goal, Milos Kakes maybe at left back, Virgil van Dijk and Ibrahim Konate. At right back, we could see Joe Gomez. Midfield, Gravenberch, Szoboszlai. That's how I'd go for it. I'd go Franvitz, I'd go Cody Gakpo, I'd go Salah, and Alexander Isak. That's how I'd go, So into that particular fixture. Nonetheless, with all that said, with the midfield battles that do promise to play out between Idris Kanagay, James Garner, and Liverpool's Gravenberch and Szoboszlai, or maybe even a McAllister, I still think that we could be destined for a 1-1 draw in this particular fixture. That's my prediction. Yes, for sure, Liverpool found it very difficult to score against PSG. Yeah, they were really, really good by in the second half. They did everything within their power to try and score, to try and win that game. It was just not their day. It was just not their day, because even when they managed to find a way through between that forest of legs of the PSG players, with attempts from Cody Gakpo, I think Mo Salah, and Riongo Moha, Matevi Safonov, the Russian goalkeeper in the PSG goal, was up to the challenge. So, yet all it took was a burst from Ousmane Dembele to beat Georgi Mamadashvili in the opposite direction. So, would they have been proud of their performance? Not really, because, like I keep saying, good is not good enough. You ought to be better. If you think this is good, you ought to be that to beat some of your opponents, because if you're not that, then suddenly they're above you in any way. So that's my feeling about that. And Arne Slot is under enormous pressure, Maybe the positive for them is that Richard Hughes will be staying at the club, according to reports. Then also, Liverpool have not given any indication that they are eager to have a managerial change in the summer. So looks like Arne Slot will stay on. They are going to look to sort of have a bit of a squad revamp, particularly with their defenders. They're looking to strengthen that defense. That's why they've already agreed the deal for Jeremy Jacquet to join them from State Rents for about £55 million guaranteed fees and £5 million in expected add-ons. Then I think they will be looking for an addition beyond Jeremy Jacquet. That midfield, they'll be looking for somebody. They will need a backup for Milos Kakes, because Andy Robertson is leaving at the end of the season after 9 seasons at the club. and chances are he could be destined for a move to Tottenham Hotspur, who are interested in his services. So yeah, we just have to wait and see how the summer will shape up for Liverpool. So anyways, that's that for the Merseyside derby. But sticking with match day 33, there's another game that I think is worth the salt for us discussing and giving an opinion about. And that's the game between Tottenham Hotspur and Brighton and Hove Albion. Not because it's one of the biggest of the weekend, but it is of great significance in regards to Tottenham's season. Whether do they survive relegation or do they get relegated? Two, it's going to be Roberto Di Zerbi facing his former bosses and facing the guy that replaced him in Fabian Hatzler. We know for a fact that Tottenham have struggled for results at home this season. I think they have only 2 wins in the Premier League at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Really, Brighton are one of the teams in better form in recent times, So besides the 1-0 loss to Arsenal, they've won all the other 4 games, winning against Nottingham Forest by 2-1, beating Sunderland by 0-0, overcoming Liverpool 2-1, and most recently putting 2 past Burnley. In contrast, on the other side, Tottenham Hotspur have only had 1 point taken from the last 5. They've lost 4 and drawn 1. The draw coming against Liverpool. Roberto Di Zerbi's first time of asking, he lost to Sunderland by 0-0. That goal scored by Nodi Mukele. I think he took a deflection off of Mickey van de Ven, but nonetheless still found the back of the net. So there's that. Then also, this fixture is less about Roberto Di Zerbi proving to his former bosses his capabilities, because he did tremendously well for them. I remember in his debut campaign, I think, which was the 2022-2023 season, he guided them to a 6th place finish, which was their highest. So he has nothing to prove. What he has to prove is to the Tottenham fans that they are headed in the right direction. He's already given guarantees that, relegated or not, he will not leave Tottenham. But the ideal situation would be for Tottenham not to be relegated. And their winning has to start somewhere. This is the first of the 6 remaining games for Tottenham Hotspur to salvage their campaign. Is there a way out for them? There is, if they take care of their own business. But that's not enough in taking care of their own business. When I say take care of their own business, I mean win all your remaining games. They would also have to pray that either West Ham or Nottingham Forest or Leeds United falter to their favor. But before you ask any of those 3 to falter to your favor, you must take care of your business. And against Sunderland, they did not do that. Nonetheless, there were some positives to take out of that. They did look a bit more positive, more organized. Unfortunately, they've lost a captain in Cristiano Romero to injury. In fact, his World Cup appearance with Argentina is in doubt because of the injuries suffered against Sunderland. Excuse me. So there's that. Then Brighton, on the other side, equally have nothing to prove themselves to the world. And nor does Fabian Hatzler have anything to prove. However, just like Everton, for Brighton and Hove Albion at 46 points in 9th place, the dream of European football, even if it could be as small as the UEFA Conference League appearance, is still within catching distance. Because Brentford, that occupy the 7th place, that affords you the UEFA Conference League qualification, are only a point above them. So they have something to play for beyond bragging rights and finishing in a higher position that earns you a little more money than others. So there's something bigger that they can fight for going into this weekend. The question is, will they overcome? I do not think they have a choice. Just like as much as Tottenham do not have a choice in regards to what to play for. The only thing they have to play for is survival. I said this after the appointment of Roberto Di Zerbi. I said that the silver lining in his dark cloud is that he has one game to play every week. So, whereas it is such a short period of time, usually, if you're a manager walking through the doors of a new club midway the season or at the tail end of the season, you cannot overload your new players with lots of information or otherwise you're bound to lose them or confuse them. So you have to give them little snippets of information, but you got to start somewhere. And organization is part of that. I remember watching the footage from his first training session with Tottenham Hotspur, and it focused on ball distribution, release the ball quick enough, ball control, how do you position yourself in receiving the ball, and then your vision. One touch play, make it simple, do not make it too complicated. He focused on that. And we saw good signs of that. Like I said, there's more organization to this Tottenham Hotspur's side. So he will have to rely on Anthony Kinski, who, by the way, had a good game despite conceding, because Guillermo Vicario had, I think, a hernia surgery. That was during the international break. Pedro Porro, I think, had an effort in that game. Then Destin Udoki. Now, where you do not have Christian Romero, you should expect to see Mickey van der Ven playing alongside Kevin Danso. Ashai Gray in that midfield alongside Conor Gallagher, Lucas Bagville. He went for the attack because he had Rando Kolomwani, Richardson, and Dominic Solanke on the same turf playing, and that was a show of intent that he wanted to attack the game. I do not think in terms of overall strategy or being proactive in terms of attacking, he's going to deviate from that because he knows they need to score goals. You score goals, then you stand the chance of winning the game. So that's what is at stake for him. Milton says, I think Tottenham will avoid relegation. Perhaps that will be the wish, the hope of Tottenham Hotspur fans. The likes of Nasa Tushabe on X, the likes of Abby, is he called Abby Summers? Of TalkSport. I usually see her feature on TalkSport. What's his name? The Tottenham fan. Is he called Exposed? I think. And all the Tottenham fans were there. To be honest, because it's no longer in their driving seat, it's no longer in their hands per se, I feel for them. Because once they lost against Sunderland and West Ham had won against Wolverhampton Wanderers, that was on Friday, and moved ahead of them, it put it out of Tottenham's hands. I think for any team that is pursuing for something, whether it's survival, whether it's European football, whether it's the title, you'd rather have the destiny be in your own control as opposed to having it rely on the inefficiencies of the others. I think that's what you would love to have. That's what you would rather have, So that's the context of it. How do I see this one? Unfortunately, I went for a 2-2 draw because if it's other than that, Brighton could beat Tottenham Hotspurs. Not because it is impossible for Tottenham Hotspurs to win, but because of those underlying factors. Roberto Di Zerbi is still trying to figure it out. Brighton would want to throw a sucker punch at Tottenham Hotspurs, not because they are the biggest of rivals or anything, but because they are capable of doing it. Yankuba Minte, Danny Welbeck, Pascal Grob, Kaoru Mitoma, that good team. Yassine Ayari, Gomez, you know, they want to do something about it, really. So yeah, that's regarding the Tottenham Brighton game. So in as far as match day 33 is concerned of the Premier League, that's just about it. Those are the games that I could afford to preview for you, or that I found to be of great significance to preview. We'll continue to digest some of them. Brentford, Fulham, Leeds, Wolverhampton Wanderers, we'll talk about that. Newcastle, Bournemouth, we'll talk about that in our night broadcast, because we have a broadcast at 9 p.m. It's a Friday. Then we'll have Aston Villa Sunderland for Sunday, Nottingham Forest Burnley. We'll get to discuss that. I've told you Manchester City versus Arsenal. We're having an exclusive 19 minutes preview for that one, premiering as soon as this broadcast is done. So you keep it glued on the channel because there's more for you to come. So really, on that note, or with that said, allow me move on to what's in store starting from today or tonight elsewhere in Europe. So in the German Bundesliga, St. Pauli, Arsenal versus Man City will be crucial. Yeah, that's why I said we have an exclusive video for it that is premiering as soon as this broadcast is done. So St. Pauli up against FC Cologne, that's at 9:30 p.m. in the German Bundesliga. In the Italian Serie A, Sassuolo will welcome Como at 7:30 p.m., while Inter Milan at quarter to 10 p.m. will be up at home against Cagliari. Inter Milan looking to clinch the Scudetto, not with a win in this particular fixture, but at least moving closer to it. Then Como would want to continue with their pursuit of European football if they can win away to Sassuolo. They lost their last fixture against Inter Milan by 4-3, despite having a 2-0 lead in that one. Then in the French League 1, RC Lens will take on Toulouse. So that's for the Friday fixtures. In as far as Saturday is concerned, in the German Bundesliga, Bayer Leverkusen will take on Augsburg. Hoffenheim will be at home against Borussia Dortmund, while Wolfsburg will play away to Union Berlin. Then Werder Bremen will take on Hamburg SV. All those games kicking off at 4:30 p.m., while at 7:30 p.m. Eintracht Frankfurt will take on RB Leipzig. In the Italian Serie A, Udinese will take on Parma at 4 p.m. Napoli will be up against Lazio at 7 p.m., while at quarter to 10 p.m., AC Roma will be up against Atlanta. Again, Piero Gasperini will be facing his former bosses, who are under the charges of Rafael Palladoni. Yes. So then in the French League 1, Lorient will take on Marseille at 6 p.m., while at 8 p.m., Angers will take on Le Havre. Lille will be up against Nice at 5 minutes past 10 p.m. In as far as Saturday is concerned. Then when it comes to Super Sunday, like I told you guys, there's no Spanish La Liga fixture this weekend. What you do have will be the final of the Copa del Rey between Atletico de Madrid and Real Sociedad. So what you have on Super Sunday, in as far as the German Bundesliga is concerned, you have Freiburg against Heidenheim at 4:30 p.m., Bayern Munich against VfB Stuttgart at 6:30 p.m., while at 8:30 p.m. Borussia Mönchengladbach will take on Mainz 05. In the Italian Serie A, Cremonese at 1:30 p.m. will take on Torino. At 4 p.m. Hellas Verona will take on AC Milan. At 7 p.m. Pisa will be up against Girona, while at a quarter to 10 p.m. on Sunday, Juventus will be up against Bologna. Then in the French League 1, AC Monaco will take on Le Havre at 4 p.m., while at a quarter past 6 p.m., Métis will be up against Paris FC. Then Strasbourg at the same kickoff time will be up against Stade Rennes, while in the late kickoff on Sunday at 9:45 p.m., Paris Saint-Germain will be up against Olympique Lyon. So those are the games to come from your top major 5 European leagues that could be of interest to you. So keep it glued on the Football Tribe UG channel. we'll be bringing you all the updates from those respective leagues in as far as things go. Of course, in the French League One, PSG are looking to clinch the title. Last I checked, they were 4 points ahead of RC Lens, but they have a game to spare. That game in hand, I think, is against RC Lens because they did not play last weekend in preparation to their reverse fixture against Liverpool. They've been given that sort of advantage to have their games postponed every time they have engagements in Europe. So, which is contrary to what teams from the Spanish La Liga, from the Premier League, the Italian Serie A were being accorded. So it does give them an advantage, and I completely understand. I do not condemn them for doing it, you know. In any case, I'd rather be advocating that the other leagues do the same. Okay, a very fair analysis as always. Thank you so much, Milton, for that kind compliment. So, guys, why don't you allow me wrap it up here for us this morning and say thank you to first last Adam Tamos. I don't know why I read Adam as Adash. Apologies, my name was my mind was prejudiced. So, bro, did you watch Real Madrid Bayern Munich? Yes, of course I did. Best match ever, probably. Apologies, maybe I did not catch that one the right way in terms of the comment. But Adam Tamos, thank you so much. Richard, thank you so much. Richard Hall, Richard Hall. Then also Ding Dong, Dominic Solanke. Thank you so much for your contribution. Milton, always a pleasure to have you around. Guys, stay blessed. Have a blessed weekend ahead. Let's catch up tonight at 9 p.m. East African time. Friday broadcast comes early, not you at 11 p.m. unless otherwise, in preparation for the weekend and other engagements. So for now, stay blessed, and I'll see you guys next time. But do not forget, as soon as we close on here, that video is going to be premiering in about 3 to 4 minutes. The preview exclusively for Manchester City versus Arsenal. I do give my thoughts. We talk about the match facts. I also give my predictions in that one. So be blessed as you watch. Do not forget to leave me a comment on that video as well. Like it also and share it with your friends that are interested in football, so that the more you like, the more you comment and share, the more our content gets recommended to wider audiences. Bye-bye for now.